Right, this is going to be episode 39 of OverSight. This is the real thing now, Monty. I know everyone's waited, like, what was it? It's like 8 months just for the Overwatch League. Then we did that whole, like, mega episode, which, you know what, I've said it before. Those sound so great on the surface. It's kind of like the Justice League movie. How could it be bad, right? You've got Batman, you've got Superman, you've got, like, sort of the wrong person playing the Flash, but whatever, we'll forget that. You've got a character I don't even know, like one that was vaguely in the comics. You've got a rubbish version of Aquaman. You're like, okay, actually, yeah, once I start thinking about it, it's not really as sick as it sounds, does it? And a lot of those episodes, if I'm being honest, the problem is, because the people who come on the show obviously don't know what everyone said before, there is some retrodden ground. That's probably not even a word, retrodden. Whatever. I retreaded, I did trod, and between the two, it already went over, didn't it? So let's start the episode with an attempt to speak my native language, English, which I actually, I thought I was quite good at until this episode, so who knew? So if we can get the translator in here and cheer for me, I will show a good show. So on this episode, our guests, because again, this year, my resolution after getting 18 years into the esports industry, Monty, is to actually introduce the guests and not just say their name, but even try and say the team they play for. And if possible, I don't want to stretch it too far, say the position they play without getting sidetracked into some kind of banter, which then means that you never double back. So we'll see if I can do it successfully, okay? So in the bottom right-hand corner, we have a return guest. And no, not just the people who... I know everyone who goes, wait a minute, I've been on all those mega episodes. It's like, yeah, some of you have only been on those mega episodes, so maybe there's a reason we don't invite you for the full ones. But anyway, keep trying. Those don't really count. Super actually really was on an episode before. You might remember that. If you remember, if you can't remember, I'll give you a quick prime, okay. He was the guy who came on when his team was getting ploughed every single week, yet talked in a really cocky fashion about how, like, him and Sinatra would, like, dominate when they got in, sort of, like, mildly BM'd people, like, generally hyped people up for the shock. In many ways, we didn't know it, but he was a shock player to the core in that sense, because he represented the spirit of what the shock is all about in that sense, unbridled potential, the hubris of youth, and being overpaid. So fair enough. Well done. You thematically you're checking all the boxes.
It's not bad, honestly.
Yes.
I think it's been about a year actually since I came on. About exactly a year. Yeah,
I think so. That would make sense. It was early on, and even though now this sounds awkward, I'll just say you are a tank player for the San Francisco Shock. See, I'm not very good at this. I'm sort of learning on the go here. I'm still figuring it out. Still figuring. Give me time.
Yeah,
yes, exactly. I'll edit all that. That'll look great in post. And then the other guest is, imagine it was a world in which I even did edit. That's another thing. What next year, right? 2020, I'll start editing. Right.
And when are we, Thorin? When are we going to start putting our content on iTunes or Spotify as a podcast?
See, the problem with that is, as soon as... Listen, I'll tell you what, Monty, the day they ever make that monetized like a motherfucker, I'll be all over that. Like, it might even become an iTunes-only podcast on that day with the way YouTube ad rev's going. So, who knows? Just keep pulling for the right tech giants to monopolize the world and take over all global communications fans. Right, so it's not my fault SoundCloud can't step the fucking game up, It's like people crying about the Shanghai Dragons not winning any of those games. Well, they were bad, weren't they? They don't deserve to win. But that'll be a topic we'll talk about this episode. So the other guest, before I forget, is Dogman, who is a support player for the Atlanta Reign. Now, new team, team that's got a very interesting lineup. Don't really have any flame for this one, fair enough. Just, see how things go.
Yeah, there's not enough.
There's just no reason to flame, is there?
Yeah.
One of the only times I've ever said that statement, obviously. The idea that all the other flame I ever said was necessitated, you have to understand what you like. It was logical that I did it all the times in the past. I've got a question for you, Monty, to start off with. Did week one live up to your expectations? Loaded question, you were basically obliged to say yes.
I'm not obliged to say yes. In the gameplay way, I will say yes, though. I think a lot of the matches were really exciting. I think we saw a pretty good variety of compositions across the board. Obviously, there was a lot of GOATs, but that wasn't the only thing we saw by a long shot. I think every hero got played meaningfully. Yep, definitely did. Even
I saw there was a lot of teams that had like 15, 14 heroes played in a match.
Yeah. There is a lot more versatility than I think people were giving credit for. Teams are experimenting with different things, like that Chengdu Guangzhou match had hardly any goats in it. So there's a lot of happening right now. One of the issues was like, live up to my expectations in terms of the schedule. I think yesterday I think we ended 2.5 hours later than we were supposed to. So a lot of these games are starting
because there's no 3-0s, were there?
2
and every
hours
game's
later.
forever.
I mean, there can't be 3-0s, which is an
That's
issue.
true.
We still have to play all 4 maps. So yeah, we went to 3 game 5s, almost 4 game 5s yesterday. So it's the schedule's pretty brutal. Not for the players. In fact, it's way less brutal for the players because now they'll have maximum 2 matches a week and oftentimes 1 match. But for on the production side, it's pretty rough.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there.
I read that if yesterday's games took place on a Thursday or Friday, they would have ended at like 3 a.m. on the East Coast. So
yeah, it's not great. I'm sure they're going to work on that, and we'll figure out what some of the solutions are to schedule better. Because I don't think anybody really like. I guess you could say it was predictable. Like you could have predicted that these games were going to go longer than their allotted 1.5-hour slots. But I mean, for the most part, I thought the viewership was great. It was very stable.
There was the Irishman who came up with that like universal law that I believe covered the principle. His name's Murphy or something, right? So, I don't know if anyone at Blizzard wants to know his fundamental laws for us in esports. He's like the Newton of our field. You have to understand. Like he was very prescient man. Like
I think Murphy's law is in fact the de facto, state of esports as an industry.
Well, especially because if it ever does end early, you just spend the half an hour while you leave and just going, wow, I can't believe it's over already. Wow, look at that. The sun's only just going down outside, so you're on the way out. Obviously the joke there would be, is that the way that if this were, like, you ready? Everyone be careful right now what you say. I'm just going to give you one. If this was obviously like an Activision Blizzard call to the investors, what they'd say is, well, good news, everyone, because actually with the new format, we can simultaneously cover all global markets. And as where the west coast of the North America is finishing their section, China wakes up and they start watching the games there. So our plan eventually is to have a truly global league in which the league is literally running 24 hours a day and everyone can just tune in at any time they're awake. So,
I mean, you're not wrong. Like, there's a reason why, Thursday and Friday, the Guangzhou, Chengdu game and Shanghai
was the last one.
Hangzhou game were the last ones of the evening because it actually was a good time for Chinese viewership, and also the European teams playing at noon here on Saturday so that you could watch it in like France and England, at 8, 9
I noticed on 3 of the last 4 games of the 4 days, it was a Chinese team at least, if not 2.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the Asian team Seoul as well. That trend is probably going to continue where they can. Obviously, it won't always be. We had 2 different matches that were 2 Chinese teams against each other this week, so it made sense for that time slot. I don't know. Scheduling is going to be an interesting thing moving forward, because obviously these games are taking longer than predicted. Okay,
right. Super. Start us off then. So. Things went pretty well this week, right?
Well, are you talking about for the team or for the league overall? For my team or just
for you? Yeah, for you and your team.
Well, I think going into the Dallas game, we were pretty high expectations for that one. We kind of expected to beat them, and we did. And then the Gladiators won. It
was a good game.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been better, but.
You're cutting out a little bit there, Super.
Yeah, maybe put the mic threshold down a little bit or something. I don't know why it just cut a little bit.
We are we good now, hopefully?
Yeah, I think so.
It's still cutting out pretty. It's like clipping the end of your words because your noise gate.
Ooh, hold on, I can maybe. Is this better?
I think so, yeah.
That sounds
Keep
better.
going.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, I mean, we watched back the Gladiators and Soul game a little bit, and we didn't really see much from Gladiators because they kind of just let Fisher walk over them, to be honest. But they coming into our game, they really changed the way they played, and we were kind of just not ready for it. I mean, we still went to map 5, and it was like a 3-round map 5, so it was definitely close. But I feel like we kind of didn't prepare as well as we should have for that one, and yeah. Is
that to imply then that preparation beforehand meant you assumed you were going to win all these games and that things were going really great?
Well, we're not going to go into a match thinking we're going to lose. I think that's a pretty bad attitude, right? But they just definitely they changed the way that they played, and we weren't ready for it. So,
I mean, also on an individual level, I thought it was a good game all, but you talk about going to that final point. You guys did have 6 ults on your last push to 1 of theirs, and he still managed to lose. I think Chorhyobin looked a little dodgy in terms of EMP. You yourself and Sinatra were too far forward at times and sort of getting cut off. When you say that, when you looked at their last match and you said the Gladiators sort of let Fissure walk all over them, do you think that they were prepared for more aggressive tank play like that comes out of you and Sinatra and were ready to, siphon them off or cut you off from the rest of your team?
I think like they just got better at disengages after the Soul match. Like they really were ready for that because they didn't disengage that well, in my opinion, versus Soul, and that's why I think Fissure was able to just run a train on them. But
I wanted to add to that super real quick because specifically in your guys' game, I know Gladiators played a lot better than they did in the Soul game, in my opinion. Because at least coming into this season, like at least me and our team thought Gladiators was a pretty solid team, like near where everyone thought Shock was going to be level. So, I mean, coming into the Soul matches, pretty much a surprise to everybody that they lost the Soul. So I think coming into your guys' match, they were definitely a lot more prepared and experienced.
Yeah, because we never scrimmed Gladiators, but we scrimmed Soul quite a bit. And everyone, we heard a lot of talk about, Gladiators they're going to be top 5, top 4, stuff like that. So seeing them lose to Soul was kind of, I don't know if I'd say shocking, but it wasn't like the result we expected. So.
Okay. What was your thoughts overall on Shock then, Dogman? What would your take be as an outsider?
I think most people think that Shock is. I say most people, I guess, within my team, we think Shock is a really solid team overall. A lot of experienced and high mechanical players in comparison to a lot of teams, because you know how a lot of these teams have contenders players coming in and stuff like that. Like my team, for example, is still kind of new, even though we have a lot of mechanically skilled players and a lot of very smart players. Only what is that, like 3? Only like 3 of us have been at LANs, which is all the Koreans, the LFZ player and Erster, and then the 2 Element Mystic players in Dako and Pokpo. So the rest of us haven't had any LANs to play at yet. So this is kind of, at least the Mayhem game was a good warm up for us. But we're still a new team. Shock has experienced players in Sinatra and Super. They've been, like you were talking about, getting spanked for last season. So once you have that under your belt, then nothing can get worse. You already hit rock bottom.
To be fair,
they were fine in like stage 3 and 4.
To be fair, I had a positive win rate last season when I played.
Oh, okay.
I bet that's never been said within that team house before. That didn't sound like it's rolled off the tongue there, did it, Monty? Yeah, that's interesting.
Next he's gonna start mentioning his gold elims and gold damage. Probably.
There we go.
Yep.
Krusty gives him gold stars after every game.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, what about then, let's give us your thoughts on your matches this week, Dogman.
I think our matches were, at least the Florida game, I didn't feel very good after that one, because after that game, I felt like I played like garbage, and that was like a good, even though it was a 4-0, it wasn't necessarily the best 4-0 to get, I guess, in the league. Like, if we
should it have been that easy a game though?
I mean, I feel like Florida wasn't even playing Overwatch against you guys, so I'm not sure how critical you could be of your own. Sure, I'm sure you wanted to perform better, but that was such a stomp.
Listen, he knows his coach is going to watch this, so obviously he can't be like, "Oh, it's easy." It's like, we have a lot to improve still. And we made mistakes. It could have been a perfect 4-0.
No, I'm genuinely hard on myself, I guess, for those games. I do not to. I don't know. Just coming into the next game, in the Fusion game, it felt a lot better. Even though we lost, it's still. I mean, it's still the beginning of the season. It's still early, so I think most of our spirits are high. My spirits are high. It was a lot better than the Florida game. So even though we lost, I still feel better than winning.
Did you actually have any experience with the Florida team before you played them?
Once when I was trying out for other Overwatch League teams, a month ago or so.
So, Dogman, you're new to Overwatch League, and you were a sudden addition to the Atlanta ring because you were a 2-way player that was like sort of randomly.
Or academy player. Gator's the 2-way.
Oh, you were an academy player. Excuse me.
Yeah,
you were an academy player that was very recently called up to the main roster and signed to the main roster. Mm-hmm. So, why were you added so late, like right before the season began, and how has it been sort of integrating into this team on a short timeline?
I think it had to do with some teams being interested in me, not just this team, to the preseason. I thought that coming into the season I would not get picked up till like midseason if I got picked up midseason, as in like halfway through, like when people were talking about midseason. I didn't even expect to get picked up this early, I guess. But there was enough interest preseason by multiple Overwatch League teams that I just decided to play with Atlanta. And me and Kodak, the other flex support for our team, Thorin, he plays flex support just for role's sake. Because he plays like a different style of flex support, we can work well on the team and play certain maps. And that was kind of the reason, I guess, is because we have such different play styles, and I have a lot of experience playing goats.
When you came in, then did they actually basically tell you like you will get starting time, and like is that something that's discussed in this kind of a scenario? Because I often wonder, with some of the players last season where some of them like the whole the whole debate was like, should you join a team if you're just going to get benched, or should you play in contenders to have playing time? It's like you have to weigh it up, right?
I think you have to weigh it, but at the same time, pretty much every team I was talking to said that the only way you're going to get playing time is by playing well. So it's like you don't just come in and expect to get playing time if you're a garbage player, right? So I needed to, prove that I can be on a starting roster first.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I can't debate what they said. It's absolutely accurate. But the obvious question it begs, Monty, is why are they recruiting players who aren't really garbage? Good? I'm just gonna say it, right? I know it's not necessarily literally what they meant, but it is kind of a funny way to say it. And like, listen, some of you guys, it's like the Harvard attendance speech. Some of you guys look to your right, look to your left. Some of you'll never see playing time in this team. Some of you are garbage. It's like, what is this?
I think the way I meant to phrase it, I guess, was that like you can see a player like trying out and stuff, and they may be good trying out, but like once you get them in your roster and they start playing, and then they're bad, then it's like, oh crap, this plan backfired.
Sure.
I guess.
Sure. Okay.
So what's the main difference, do you think, style-wise for the team between you and Kodak? When do they put you in? When do they put Kodak in?
So I guess I'll just rephrase what I said on media day because I didn't want to leak too much. But pretty much the biggest difference is that he's more of like a I guess I would say sniper, somebody that plays to live, somebody that plays safe, not as vocal. But when I play, I have a lot of I make the team. Ah, shit! I don't want to leak anything. I do make a lot of calls. I'm a very vocal player and very.
So
aggressive.
how does that in that case? Because I've before you were there, I was at the Atlanta house, and
yeah, they told me how you came by and then you said predicted Florida win after watching your scrims, Monty, dude.
Well, it was also I didn't have a good read on you guys because I think I saw you like 2 or 3 days after most of the team arrived in LA. So it was mostly just about seeing your environment rather than I didn't think those scrims were very meaningful.
Yeah, and it's better to predict the already existing Overwatch League teams too, I guess.
Sure. It wasn't, that team is basically a new team too. But anyway, point of this is like Masa was doing a lot of the calling when I was there. So are you like splitting the calling duties with Masa when you're playing?
Yeah, it's it's definitely a different environment totally from when I'm in and when I'm not in. So is the way to phrase it, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually had no idea it'd be this political already, but okay, right. No, we won't pry anymore. Now we'll just ask about other teams, and then you'll have to basically filter what you really know about them and you figured out, but can't tell us because you need to secretly use it next week. Okay, I'll leave you to deal with that, Dogman. We just ask the questions. We ask the questions and listen to the answers.
Okay.
All right.
What is that? What are the other people's thoughts then on the Atlanta Reign?
Well, I want to ask Super the same question. So when you were playing with Smurf, who's a new player to this roster, when are you guys using Smurf versus you? What do you think the difference in your play styles are?
Interesting. Well, I think for the most part, Smurf he quieter than I am, just for the fact that English isn't really his native language because obviously he's from Korea, so he speaks Korean. But his English isn't bad. But it's still like sometimes if they're just like if they feel like they want me to call more, or if they need me to say more things, or try and if they have like things that they want me to do, or like call outs and stuff like that, then I think they'd rather have me in. But I don't think the language barrier is the only thing that they have between me and Smurf, but that's probably a big one.
in your team, you know, people speculated this when they saw like the makeup of the roster. Was there a logic that like, you know, certain Korean players would be paired together and then they would come in the game? Or was it really just like, you know, whoever plays well in the trials or whatever gets to be in the starting lineup? What's kind of the rationale?
Yeah, I really never understood, you know, people always said, oh, it's just going to be 5 Koreans plus Moth. Like, first of all, it doesn't even make any sense because Moth doesn't speak Korean, right? And like, yeah, he's our only main support, but like, I just don't understand like the rationale or the logic behind where people got that opinion from. Because if you think about it, it doesn't even make sense. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Sure.
So I don't.
At least you can't be flamed that much if you're the sport, though. You know, they're just saying like, heal. You're like, yeah, whatever. I'll be there in a minute. It's like,
Yeah, that's good.
as long as you don't learn that particular word that we all know. Koreans just say all the time. It's the word that I learned the second I loaded up League of Legends when I got there and just like walked into lane and missed one auto hit or something. And they all started telling me their favourite word that I very quickly learned the meaning of. I kept thinking, that's a weird word. What does that mean? Google Translate helped me out on that one. So anyway, what do you guys think of the Atlanta Rain then? And obviously, you know, Dogman's here, so, you know, be polite about how you phrase it.
No, I can leave the room real quick if you want.
Oh, you're going to hear it later anyway, right? No, I thought they had a really solid debut. I don't think that Philly is the strongest like GOATS team in this meta by any means. But I do think like playing them close was impressive in and of itself. I got virtually no read from their game against Florida just because of how one-sided everything was and how easy it looked. But I was surprised at times where I was surprised they started Defran, which means that he's, I assume, in a good place as a player to join this professional team and come out and be mentally stable and happy and ready to play. He looked really good mechanically in the games. I like some of the strategies that they're using. I've noticed you guys are often playing without your off tank on certain control and assault maps, which is interesting to me because Erster, one of your DPS players, is playing D.Va, and he was really quite good at it. And I think that gives you guys some really interesting flexibility. Mm-hmm. Even against Philly, when you played him and you didn't run triple DPS, the threat was always there. And I'm sure you had certain triple DPS compositions you had planned against certain compositions from Philly had they run them. But that was cool. Like, I think that this roster is using the players well. And, you know, things look pretty clean and pretty tight so far, I'd say.
Okay. What do you think of Atlanta Rain Super?
Yeah,
if indeed you do.
Shock and Atlanta, we've scrimmed quite a few times with each other. I'd say probably more so than almost any other team. I think they're probably one better expansion teams, to be honest. I think like them, Spark and Paris probably, because we haven't scrimmed Vancouver yet because, you know, they're our next game, so I can't really say anything about them. But so far those three seem to be the best out of the expansion teams, and I don't think you know, their match against Philly was a bad one, because I also think Philly is pretty good, honestly, compared to just some of the other teams we played. But you know, I think. Wait a minute, did you guys win the Volsky map? I don't.
Yeah,
remember.
we did. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It was really close,
yeah, that was a really close match. But you know, I actually think it looked pretty good. I think they can probably work on a few things, but you know, overall, I don't think they did bad at all.
You're still cutting in and out a little bit, Super, if you can change your noise gate.
Ooh, it's pissing me off.
How have you noise gated this microphone?
Dude, I don't even know. But maybe
it might
okay
just
now?
be maybe like the wire like pulls a little bit or something. I don't know. It sounds okay to me. So
right.
we'll see if it goes like that again.
Yeah, if it keeps going, just let me know. Yeah, I'll
All
try
right.
and figure it out.
Okay. What about you, Monty? What is your take?
On
The Atlanta Rain?
Atlanta?
Yeah.
What? Atlanta Rain? Well, I already gave my take. I think they're pretty good. Like, overall, I think that they're using the depth of their roster to
Sure.
a good degree. They seem to have some really unique strategies prepared with Torbjorn and playing to some of their team's strengths. I like the way that you guys were using double sniper on some maps like Sanctum. I thought it was interesting. And you know, overall, it was a super close match that you guys ended up playing against Philadelphia. And I think that as an expansion team, playing a close match against one of the grand finalists who has also, you know, looked pretty good, is impressive. So, I mean, seemed pretty all right to me. I think maybe if I were to revise power rankings right now, I'd probably put you somewhere around like 10th or 11th, I'd guess.
Yeah, I guess. Well, from that match, I guess I'd probably use one of those classic NBA memes that fucking Carpe boomed me or whatever.
Well, that's how it always happens. That fucking Carpe booms everybody, except in the finals where he did nothing except get sat on by Gesture the entire time.
Prophet was the one who boomed everybody.
Well, I think Gesture boomed Carpe pretty hard, and
That's
his
true.
team really wasn't helping him. I think Philadelphia is interesting, though, because I was saying this on the post show yesterday, but how many of these map 5s does Philadelphia go to, and how many times does Carpe just fucking randomly win them maps? Like, if they didn't have Carpe to clutch out,
Sure, yeah.
Sorry,
this team would be bad.
Sorry, Monte. I want to say though, I do think that on the Philly Fusion, I think specifically because of all the, Carpe love and all that, and him carrying games or whatever, that storyline. I think specifically Poco, I think doesn't get enough credit because he, especially on Ilios, clutched it out a lot, and especially the tank line. Sato and Poco really fucked my shit up because it was like last fight on Ilios. I don't remember if it was 99-99 on round 3. But I think there was one where I was like 1 HP and I was like all the way back at our main, and then Poco just inted on me back there and just like won them the fight. And then the next fight, Sato just monkey ulted me to spawn for like a whole 10 seconds. So I think their tank line doesn't get enough credit. I guess that's the point I'm trying to go for.
I mean,
That's
they're a
true.
solid
They
team
all-
all around. There's
Yeah,
no
but
doubt about it, right?
The problem is, though, like, if you have a really good DPS player, they're always just going to be the player they're the highlight players. The problem with
Yeah.
spectating the game, it's tough to know what the people who are setting you up are doing.
That's just kind of how Overwatch is. The people that are killing everybody are the people that are going to get the most recognition. So
It's like the analogy I would give would be, it's like if in an NFL team you have a really good running back, but then they have an amazing offensive line as well. Like, unfortunately, they have to basically be invisible because you're watching the guy running through the hole, aren't you? You don't go, why is there a gap there? You know what I mean? Like, it's just unfortunate. So,
It doesn't change the fact that offensive linemen are some of the highest paid players in the NFL because of how crucial they are to the offensive.
Yes.
Buying the quarterback time, opening holes for running backs, like they are the one of the primary parts of that offense. But that's how you are in Overwatch League. If you're playing tank, you are basically an offensive lineman, and you're moving people around, and you're not making all the cool, flashy plays most of the time.
Did you see though that interview where Gesture came over? Oh, who was it? Was it Soy who said it? Where she said like, "Oh, you broke my heart, Gesture," and he did that classic move. Do you remember that thing from League of Legends where Mac Noon did that interview with Carmack that one time, and Carmack goes to him like, Shox was crying last night, and the thing was, right, there's a certain type of Korean who doesn't know Western humor and sarcasm particularly, and so when they say to Gesture like, "You broke my heart," he goes, "Really?" It's like he had like such an earnest look in his eyes, like it actually broke my heart. It broke my heart. That actually was so horrible.
I like how he had the rose though. That was great.
He did. That just like floated up out of nowhere, like a still stop motion animation or something. Okay, so then since we were talking about Fusion, obviously they're a team we want to discuss because the opening game was the rematch of the finals, and they did win the 2 games. So why did the Fusion win the first 2 games, Monty, if they are not indeed the premier GOATS team?
Well, I think part of it was their opponents. London really does not look good in the GOATS meta, and they are not doing things which I think help them to win, i.e. not playing GOATS. Like they opted into a bunch of GOATS mirrors against Paris, which I found confusing because they were way worse at playing it than Paris was. I'm not sure if they just don't want to play GOATS, if they don't like it, if they can't do it, but they're not good at it. And I think Philadelphia, it was a really sloppy game also, and neither team I think came out of that looking amazing, but London is, I think, struggling right now, and I think their second match obviously was a very close one against Atlanta that really could have gone either way on that final map, and many of the maps were super close. But at the same time, I don't think Atlanta is like in position to take top 5 this stage or anything. So I think Philadelphia maybe hasn't had, they've had an okay schedule, but it's certainly not the strongest.
So why is a team as deep as the Fusion not a good GOATS team then?
They're really good at right now. They're really good at the Winston goats, at least. Like they're good at. They're not as good on like Rhine goats because Sato's Reinhardt's not as good as some other main tanks. But his Winston is definitely one of the top Winstons, I think, and they're really good at Winston goats specifically. Like
Yeah.
they're not as good at at goats because they're not as good at Rhine goats. You know.
And Rhine goats, the problem is that if you play Winston goats into Rhine goats a lot of the time, the Rhine goats is better because. All right, so I think Reinhardt is just better at controlling the points, better at controlling space, and when you have to engage as a Winston into Rhine goats, because you can't. There's not the barrier that can move around, and you don't have that same like sort of forward pressure tankiness. You sort of have to dive in and carve the tank line off or cut off line of sight with your bubble so that the tank line can't get healing and then quickly kill somebody in the front line. But getting in there in the first place on Winston is difficult because you either have to use a Zarya bubble, because if the Lucio has boop, if you try and jump in, it'll just boop you away and you can't engage properly. I'm sure Super can fill in some more points on this. You can't engage properly, and if you use the Zarya bubble, then it just bursts immediately, and then you don't have Zarya bubble or anybody else in that for the next few seconds during that engagement. So I think it's hard to engage on Rhine goats with Winston goats effectively.
Yeah, I think it also really depends on the map that you play, because
Sure.
some maps are really strong for Winston that you can run, like Horizon. Like I would say, like the defense Horizon, Winston is really good just because of the verticality and the way you can move around.
And also,
But-
they have to go up that stupid staircase where you can charge
Yeah,
primal
yeah, you get
instantly.
primal about 5 seconds. Yeah. But basically, when you're playing Winston and Winston goats, I feel like you just got to be a big giant mosquito that kind of just pisses people off. And just try and live and distract and let your team do something, because you're not really gonna get much done on your own, even with primal, because people can like just instantly blow you up with Discord and Brigitte Bash. That's like 800 of your HP gone if you get focused in that point. So, it's not easy, but on some maps, it's definitely pretty good.
I don't know. I do understand the verticality argument. I just feel like when we've seen a lot of Rhine or Winston goats mirrors, or like Rhine goats versus Winston goats, players are usually trying to avoid playing the Winston into Rhine matchup.
Yeah, I think it's just because like if you take a head-on fight, the Rhine just has more value. So
Well, the other thing is too is this is a meta where Reinhardts can do a ridiculous amount of damage, and if you have everybody locked up in a graviton, the Reinhardt can do so much damage to that clumped up group of players, and it helps you finish those fights. So you sort of lose a lot of damage. Like I feel like you lose both durability and damage by switching to Winston, but you gain mobility, and it's what you can do with that mobility. But it's hard to use that mobility because you're attacking a death ball of players. So if they're all together, then it becomes super hard to really use that mobility effectively. Because it's not like they're strung out and, they're flanking, so I'm just going to jump on their Zenyatta while their Tracer and Sombra are behind me, right? It's like, oh, I have to just jump into 6 players. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that's where Philly plays it really well, Monty, is because they do get the Discord off, like that's why I died a lot in the match, and it was like I don't really care too much about chat and stuff like that, so I didn't look at it necessarily, but I heard it after. It was like either dog shit or Pogman. It was like the chat kept going back and forth on it, but basically what kept happening is I kept getting discorded and fucking dying like near instantly because of Sato. Is just like we weren't prepared for it. I don't think for how good they were at Winston Goats.
I hate it when Discord gets ambivalent like that, Monty, between the two extremes of emotion, from dog shit to Pogman.
I think we got an episode title right there.
I know, that is his journey to the Overwatch League.
Congrats. Thank you for the episode title.
Yeah, thanks. Right, someone write that down.
Yeah.
Some intern write that down now.
You can give that the Twitch chat. They help with that.
So okay then, so obviously as you're right, yes, London, because they looked so bad, they should have been a marquee matchup, didn't end up being. Where do you see the fusion at the moment then after week 1?
Oh, you're talking to me or Monty?
Anyone on this one?
Oh, after week 1, I think they're maybe top 8 to top 6 even.
I'd move them up maybe a couple spots. I had them at 9th on my power rankings, and I might move them up to like 7. I think after this week.
I feel like power ranking, or at least specifically rankings, especially this early, are kind of hard because the season's so long. Or is this like
Sure.
stage rankings kind of, or is it?
I just mean kind of like how good do you think they are? Like,
so like basically because the whole point of power rankings is that they're not reflective of the actual rankings that the teams have from record, because you're taking into consideration strength of schedule, matchups, like, because you might say, well, I could say, for example, I don't believe this statement to be true, but for the sake of argument, I could say that I still rank San Francisco Shock number 1 because they are the best against the field, but they had a bad matchup against the Gladiators.
Yes. I think a lot of kids out there,
I would still rank San Francisco Shock number 1, but that's not the reason why, right?
The problem is, Monty, I feel like a lot of the youth out there is getting confused because they were brought up on Dragon Ball Z and they're remembering that like over 9,000 power meter thing. And that obviously was actually like a qualitative judgment of your entire power level.
Yes.
Whereas we just mean like week to week, how's it going? It's more like a form record, basically. Like, who did you play and how well did you do versus those teams relative to everyone else, kind of?
Yeah, are you on an upward trend where you're looking a lot better? Like, because you could theoretically, by stage 3, you could be a team that is, whatever, like 6-10, let's say, right? But you could technically be a top 3 team in a power ranking if you're looking really strong in that meta.
Yeah.
So,
and by the way, I will just say as a caveat, I don't blame anyone who actually doesn't understand the principle, etc. Because what I will say is, I actually know from being in the journalistic field, basically the whole point of power rankings is that it's kind of so vague that, like, as a result, you're supposed to just argue about the fact that everyone else is wrong and you're right, and team 3 should be number 2. That's kind of the point of them, you know. Like, it really is, you know. Like, what world would it be if they published it and we all just went, yeah, I agree. Yeah, very reasonable. Anyway, what are you doing next weekend?
I will say about my power rankings, though, that I was pretty happy with the fact that I think no one in my power rankings lost to a team that was more than 6 or 7 slots below them, which I think is pretty reasonable. Like, there wasn't any crazy upset of, like, Sideshow's power rankings where his number 17 Paris Eternal beat his number 1 London Spitfire.
Just has to mention that. So basically, Monty
Super just slid his little thing in there.
I know. He backhanded complimented himself and gave himself a massive window as well. Like, in his world, his number 1 team can lose to his number 6 team. And he's like, that's fine. You know, that's a reasonable range there. And then he's like, but tell you what, that Sideshow, he's pure shit. You know, the entire league. He literally doesn't know his ass from his head. You know, number 17 can beat number 1. What's going on?
I mean, he can't even call me out because he's not even, in America right now. So
exactly. That does make me suspicious that he's had those like visa problems, because I come from the exact same area in the northeast of England where Sideshow does as well. I also had it all squared away, like, you know, literally like proper company invite me, everything. It's like they just look at where we're from and they just go like, nah, this can't be real. Tear that application up. This is obviously just fraudulent. There's no way this guy would be hired for the Overwatch League or whatever, you know. It's real. Sideshow's actually a real person. Also, you know, give us a break from Reinforce. Yeah, I said it. Right. Okay. Whatever. Here's the thing. When I like people when I like someone as a person, it makes me feel more justified being really mean about them with my public persona. I don't know why.
That is the British way, I think.
It is.
It is. Way.
You know, there's love underneath it. Andy did spill that drink on me about 5 years ago, and I still haven't got over it, as everyone's fully aware. You know, I'll go ahead and tell you now, Reinforce, I'll never get over it, mate. You basically, you better wait and see if I'm ever in like a car wreck or something, pull me out. That's the only chance for redemption. So, I mean, then again, I will just remove the joke I was going to make about Reinforce getting redemption. Generally in life in his career there, it wasn't that good. It's just mean. So, okay, moving on. Now the question is, now we have to talk about someone who's the London Spitfire. Why is the London Spitfire so fucking bad? Their roster looks so amazing on paper.
Birdring's not very good at Zarya. Like, I think they're struggling to find a lot of their identity because sometimes, so in their last match coming up against Paris, Guard had a very good match. Guard is a Sombra specialist that came in, and they were playing Fury on the Zarya, and they were playing without a Diva in the match. And they did have a very solid win on King's Row, but Paris later adapted to it, was hunting for Guard when they put him in on the 4th map. Really ineffective. And I just think that they're not, like, their players are not comfortable on these heroes. And it's surprising to say, considering how vast a player like Birdring's hero pool can be. But, you know, honestly, it seems to me like they just don't care. And part of me wonders whether or not. I wonder sometimes about London's attitude, because they were able to turn it on in the playoffs and just destroy everyone when they felt like their backs were against the wall. And I wonder if they really care about the start of the season or a couple of losses. Like, they may be
that is positive
blasé
reinforcement to some kind of worrying
Right?
behavior. Because you did win the whole fucking league at the end, right? It's like, what can you really say?
Yeah.
I do wonder if their attitude is sort of like, well, we don't care about this. We don't like this meta, so we'll just destroy people later.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch the entire London versus Paris match. Like, I saw Ilios, and then I saw a little bit of some of the later maps. From what I saw in Ilios, at least, Ben Best absolutely manhandled Gesture. It was not looking too hot.
I mean, Jester's a bad Rhine.
See, I don't know if I don't think he's like one of the best Rhines, but I don't know if I'd say he's like
Compared
really bad.
by gesture levels, compared to his Orisa, his Winston. His
Okay, yeah, okay, that's fair. That's fair.
It's his worst hero.
Yeah. Out of the three, I'd say it's his worst. Yeah, you are right on that.
I also think he has a better Hammond than he has than Rhine.
Like, if that premise that Monty put forwards there had some basis to it, like, actually, they're kind of thinking, well, sooner or later the meta will evolve and we've got the players to do anything in any other meta. Is that actually the sentiment that we're going to go away from GOAT soon? I thought most people were like, we're locked into this for ages, and hence all the complaining.
I think we're locked into it for this stage. Like, I don't think we're going to see a balance patch this stage, because the Overwatch League has said that they're trying to balance better around stages for patches instead of having them like randomly appear in the middle of the stage.
I think there's a good logic to that generally.
Yeah, so they're trying to change the sort of game development cycle to match the cadence of the league. So I imagine not this week, and maybe not. How often do they usually release the patch on PTR? Like 2 weeks before
It's
it
like
goes
a
live?
week, 2 weeks. Yeah, a week or 2 weeks, something like that.
I'm trying to remember, but anyway, so I imagine in a couple weeks we'll get a balance patch, and I imagine that the thing is, they didn't have any data at the professional level. So one of the things that I'm sure the development team is looking at is, after they have all the data that they're going to scrape from the competitive server, right, this week, where they finally have all the professional teams playing again, they're going to have so much more information to make balance changes off of after this week. So I imagine they were waiting for this week. They're going to look at that data, and then they're going to make some decisions.
See, here's my opinion, and this is what I've said for a very long time. I think the biggest enabler of GOATs is Brigitte's armor pack, like her instant 150 heal plus armor overload.
The overheal, I think, is the biggest.
Yeah. Because before,
because then you can save Dogman when he's playing Zenyatta.
Yeah.
We want him to die.
Like,
yeah, should have twice as many deaths.
I feel like it's just so overlooked, because a lot of teams are like, I don't know how often it was run this last week, but I think you saw it a few times where people ran like Ana, Zen, Lucio against like regular GOATs, and Dive would beat that, because you just dive the Zen, he gets bubbled, and then he doesn't get any heals from his Ana. All he gets is a passive speed from the Lucio, and the Zen's dead, right? But as opposed to Brigitte, where you just, throw out a pack, you don't need to aim it, it goes through shields, it goes through everything. But if you switch Dive to go against Ana GOATs, then the Ana just goes Brig, and then you're fucked again. So I just think if her armor pack is looked at and it's the armor overheal is taken away, I think it would be a lot better than it is right now.
Do you want to die more, Dogman? Is this what you want to have happen?
No.
Do you miss getting one clipped by tracers?
No, well, yeah. I mean, back then I would actually have to worry about my movement. So this time, it's a lot easier to just hold W, isn't it? But no, like I think if Brig is not in meta, I don't remember, but there was a time when people were like experimenting with the triple support with the Ana with Reaper or something like that. So I feel like there's a potential that might come back if Brig's out of the picture. So I think it'd still be GOATs, but like Winston, because people are already so good at GOATs, right? Or like they've already played it for so long. It might take another whole stage out of the meta or out of the patch change to like change the meta,
Ignoring the actual. Go on.
No. So Super thinks that if you change Brigitte's health pack, that will help enable Dive, which will be able to solve some of the GOAT's issues with certain compositions. What do you think would be the biggest way or the most effective way to get rid of goats, Dogman? How would you like to see them change it?
I think Super's right. I just think that specifically it won't change immediately, I guess, because I think people are going to be garbage at dive for a while or something like that. Because
I mean, I don't think London is probably going to be garbage at dive.
well, not. I think for I guess it won't be that long. I guess before they'd be good again. Because I know last year Super was telling me that, like when I was talking to Super last year when I wasn't in Overwatch League, he was telling me how everything was just so like easy and like automatic for London when they ran dive. It was just like it felt like there was nothing you could do versus it. Like in goats, it feels like there's a lot more room to perform against every team. Whereas in dive, if you played London when they were good at dive, there was nothing you could do.
I think a big part of that is goats is by far the most team heavy meta you've ever seen. Like, it's a lot harder to solo carry in goats than it would be for like the Widowmaker meta where Carpe kills 3 and then his team wins the fight. Like, everything is so dependent on your team and having your team follow up what you do that's why I think there's such more of a chance for more teams to like beat teams that on paper should be better than them.
So in that way, since you guys have played both of these metas, what do you prefer from Overwatch? Do you like the solo, like the ability to solo carry like we saw with a lot of the Widowmaker or sniper play that was in last season? Do you like this way where it's a lot of team coordination and comms? Because in a way, it's almost a different game. This is much more MOBA-like, and the previous meta was much more FPS-like, right?
Yeah. I don't know what I would say. Like, I mean, I don't think goats is as bad. Like, I know a lot of people don't like it, and I want to like phrase this carefully because, I mean, I do think that like it's a lot more prominent. Like the Rhine, the classic goats comp that everyone runs with the Zen Brig Rhine, is really like it's hard to counter, right? So I think that is like a problem because you could run like variations of things like to a more what's the word I'm looking for? Like there were more variations to like the dive meta last year than it was this year than for goats this year. But I think they both have their ups and downs personally.
So you'd like to see maybe somewhat of a balance where both were viable?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, like for me personally, I know Zen, like the Ghost comp for Zen it's a lot. It's like super fun to play, I think, and it's not that fun to watch, I think. But for the other meta, it's definitely not. Your role shifts like entirely. Like right now, Zen, you have to be like a good damage dealer, and that's kind of like that is one of the major DPS of your comp is Zen. But in the other meta, it didn't have to be that way. Like NYXL wanted to play that way when they ran like Winston dive comps to give their Zen more involved, but it was easier to run the other way with the like Genji and whatever because you didn't have to rely on your Zen.
Okay. So obviously one of the teams in the preseason that everyone had high on the power rankings was the Hangzhou Spark, and they were a team that obviously we haven't seen them play with this particular lineup. Did they live up to the billing in the week one?
I think the first match is, I mean, they played Shanghai without a main tank, which is kind of rough for them, for Shanghai. And then they played, who was their second match again? I don't remember.
It was one that was like a close one. The Valiant.
Oh, Valiant. You're right. I think that was a close match, and I don't know if I agree with them putting Kuki on main support instead of Custa. I mean, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes. That's not, that's not me.
Wait, Super, do you guys play Spark this stage?
Yeah, we played them week 3, I believe.
Let me look at your schedule.
Yes, it was the first game of week 3.
Yeah.
You guys, San Francisco actually has a pretty difficult schedule.
Yeah.
You have to play
Vancouver, Spark, and then we played
Justice. Never mind.
I feel like from at least Atlanta
we played New York and Paris though. So
you play New York and Paris. Wow, you guys actually do have a quite challenging schedule.
Yeah.
I think Spark for a lot of people, at least the people that have practiced against him a lot, I think Spark is seemingly one of the top teams right now. In my opinion, I think Spark is super good. They just like sometimes when you play against them, it feels like there's like it feels like similar to like what London got to. It feels like they can't get to that level. if they play it right. Like both No Smite and Gushui. Like if No Smite is replacing Gushui and Gushui was so hyped to be like this amazing main tank, then No Smite's also really good. So
That reminds me.
No Smite absolutely shattered
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Valiant into the ground on that last.
On the
map.
Paul,
Totally fucked them up.
definitely gave Fate the man-to-man domination that I like to see from Reinhardt's, and it was definitely disgusting to see.
It was pretty intense, like how much Fate got outplayed in that.
Yeah. I think I shot it 4 times in a row. It was kind of disgusting.
Do you actually think? Do you also subscribe to the idea that they're the best team in the Overwatch League? Though, obviously, again, within the context that we don't really know. This is just your own sense at the moment.
I think you could make a case that they're definitely up there. Like you can talk about it, yeah.
it's definitely hard for Super. Like it's similar. It's similar with with me talking about Fusion. Like I had no idea how good. Like I thought they wouldn't be that good coming into the match. Like or as good as they were in the match. I think, just due to the fact that I haven't like played against them in like a month, and I don't think Super's played against them even once. So it's hard to get a gauge. I think on teams when you think you're good too.
Okay.
So you haven't been scrimming against the Spark Super, even though you're playing.
We played them like 3-4 weeks ago, probably about a month at this point. So it's been a while, but we have played them.
Are you guys just as teams, out of curiosity, mostly focusing on finding practice partners that you don't play this stage currently?
Yeah, I would say that's what most teams are doing.
Okay. But actually, I've just realised another thing I probably should do, especially just so everyone remembers, is I'll mention who the teams played when I mention the team as well, actually. So
Sure.
for the NYXL, they played Boston, who obviously, people had kind of mixed expectations for, and then they played the Washington Justice, who at the moment are kind of like a laughing stock. But okay, we'll see. It's the start of the league. So where is NYXL at the moment, Are they obviously that's not the hardest schedule in the world, but
I mean, I probably would drop them maybe a slot or two based on my original rankings, but I still think they're top 8 most likely. I was surprised that they dropped the map to the Justice.
Yeah, they got full held.
sloppy.
I didn't see that. What happened there?
They were up
Sandbagging
2-0.
2.0.
I think they just got cocky. Honestly, I think they just got cocky because they had smashed the Justice in the first 2 maps, and they were just like, we're already up. Like, fuck it. That said, I did think that the Justice played better on that map, so there was that aspect of it too. I thought Corey was doing some, as the series went on, I thought Corey was doing some okay things on Zarya. Less said about Justice, the better, though. NYXL,
The Boston match was really close, though, like down to the last fight type of close.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know, because I think Nepal was pretty one-sided, wasn't it? And then after that, it was like every map after that was like came down to the last fight because they drew Horizon.
Yep.
And then I watched 66, the full 66 map, and that was literally like 20 seconds left. So I don't know what was going on there. Maybe they weren't.
So it got a lot less close, I will say, when NYXL started switching to use the Sombra. And I think what they realized is when they had some of these compositions that they would just not run the Diva. And I think this is something we should talk about strategically in general, because we're seeing more teams opt into this, which is eliminate the Diva from the composition, take the Sombra in place of that Diva. So you're basically running goats with, no Diva and a Sombra is what you're doing. And the problem with that is obviously the Diva is very important for making approaches so you can eat that damage while you cross open spaces. And that means that effectively you have to hack the Diva. And I think what Mecca was doing very well was controlling both of the main tanks on the Boston side. And when you think of that, Fusion's and Note have probably been the best players for Boston so far in this season, that it makes sense that if you sort of take those players' abilities away from them, then you actually have a pretty smooth path to victory. What do you guys think about running Diva-less goats with Sombra?
I think comps with Ana work very well versus that. I mean, just anything.
Sure.
Anytime there's no Diva, Ana's gonna be viable in my opinion. So I mean, it's just that. I guess there's that. People say goats is this one static comp, but I mean, obviously there's like micro adjustments to make, and they're not even that small of adjustments. They're just quick hero swaps that make a massive difference when it comes to playing the game.
So speaking of using Ana against Diva, what is going on in the background?
It's Brad.
He's rolling around.
Brad, you were already in OverSight. Why do you want to be here again? Didn't you get roasted last week?
He's great. It's a celebration carpet rolling.
Oh my god.
Okay, so going back to Ana. So to explain to people why Ana is good when there's no Diva, it's because your Bio Grenade doesn't get eaten, and Bio Grenade is one of the most impactful abilities in the game because if you're crashing into each other, you can both get the extra heal and the anti-heal at the same time when the tank lines are smashing. So it tends to be very good. And a team that did use this strategy when there wasn't a Diva was yours, Super, when you played against the Dallas Fuel and you switched Architect over to Ana on King's Row. So, was that the thought process going in there when you made that switch on your defense?
Yeah, I mean, just because, like, not only can Diva eat the nade, but she can also just eat Ana's regular healing, and then she becomes a useless hero. Because Goat's fights, for the most part, are such head-on, and if the Diva's matrixing, then she can get your Zen orbs, she can get Zarya right clicks, fire strikes, your Ana heals, Lucio left clicks. Like, basically, she can matrix almost your entire team. And but because there's no Diva, your Ana just gets like infinite value. You can go for like sleep darts and pins and anti-heals. You can nano Rhines and grabs, which is disgusting amounts of damage. You can just nano Rhines in the middle of fights just to, get position and swing and build a shatter in 2 seconds. So, and I think this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about how, like, the problem with Goats is that your Brig can just make one hero swap, and it really helps counter a lot of other things that you can do to counter Goats. So, yeah, I don't know.
And it preserves your ult economy outside of the one hero that's getting swapped to define it. So as a flex support player, what do you think about these compositions coming into play and your ability to play Ana there, Dogman?
I mean, Super touched on it a lot. It's the main thing that I have to be aware of as a flex support is just how fast can I swap to those heroes, I guess. Like that's what matters most, because there's going to be time off the clock no matter what making that swap, and the quicker you can get it done, the faster it is, because it means some in the long run. Because obviously even on maps like 2CP, you could make swaps in the spawn while you get a reset, and that matters because you even saw in our fusion game you were saying on Twitter they got like a second left or something like that. I know the swap didn't happen, but in situations like that, it's really important. We're
still looking at that, by the way, because I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, we didn't get a second on our attack, I think, right?
No, Philadelphia should have been. So there was something confusing that happened. I don't want to say anything because I'm not sure exactly what happened yet, and until I actually get a real answer, I don't want to cause a huge amount of speculation. But that was weird.
What happened? I don't even know what happened.
So what happened is that Philadelphia finished the map against Atlanta with 1 second remaining. Okay, and Atlanta finished the map Volskaya in overtime, and it went to. I'm not gonna say instead of. It went to both teams getting 1 minute of time bank. Exactly. It was weird. It was weird. I'm looking into that. I will get back with an answer on that one because I'm still confused as to what happened.
Wait, really?
Yes.
Was it on Volskaya?
Yes.
I mean, it didn't. I guess it didn't really matter in the actual turn events because we still won the map, but.
Maybe. Anyway. I'll get back to you on that.
The problem is all your questions basically just ask Monty, can you please just say the thing you don't want to say now? I'd really rather not. But what about this one?
I just don't want to fuel a bunch of speculation because I don't actually know what the answer is.
Right,
so
okay.
Let me figure out what the actual answer is.
Okay. Right. I mean, why break the habit of a lifetime though? All right, what about this?
It's such a case. It's never happened before. So
okay. Right, what about this then? Since I addressed them since they played New York, what do you actually think of the Boston Uprising team? Because obviously The first week, I don't know how they do with this. Like, it's like they actually have used the power of narratives to overcome reality, Monty. I don't know how they're doing this. Like, should this team actually be this good? They're pretty good, right?
I mean, they're going to be good at goats.
Yeah, I could agree with Monty on that one, because specifically, I don't want to touch on it too much. I guess I play with them a little bit, like over the past couple of months while I was deciding which Overwatch League team to join, and they have a really good comm structure. Like, everybody on the team talks a lot, and specifically their tanks and Axiom or Fusion too. They have a really interesting comm structure that results in them being good goats.
Okay. What do you think, Super? Boston Uprising?
Well, I think Fusions was the standout player in the World Cup, at least for UK, when they went against, US, and they went against South Korea. So, and then he seemed to be pretty, competent at goats. And I think that's probably a big factor, because I've heard he comms a lot, and I've heard that he really understands goats, and he's pretty mechanically skilled at Rhine as well. So I think he's probably a big part of why they're doing well. And plus, note, he's he was a pretty good diva last season as well, like a standout player, I'd say. So I think they're probably two big reasons. And Axiom on Zarya is actually, even though he's like a main tank, I think he's doing better than people thought he would, is what I'll say on Zarya.
I think I generally have low expectations for players off rolling, so not sure.
Thing is, by the way, I actually did see a pretty good comment on Twitter, which did make me laugh, where someone did just say, like they said it with a sarcastic tone, obviously, so don't take this at face value, but they did say, yeah, I love paying for the viewer pass to watch star DPS players play Zarya and Brigitte or something I kind of felt what you said. That's all I'm going to say.
Zarya can be fun to watch, but
it can, but it's not Tracer, mate. It's
true.
not like it's not the obvious pop off the screen type thing.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like Monty. Thorin. That's like anything like in football or whatever, where if it's more of like a passing game, you're like, oh, I have the star running back or the star quarterback that runs the ball or whatever. It's just not as interesting.
Well, that's actually why when Monty asked you earlier if you actually like to play it, because that's always a distinction that you have to make. Is sometimes actually what can be aesthetically really fun to watch is actually terrible to play. It can be really irritating, or it's too much lock involved or something. So I always wonder actually what the player experience side of it's like in that respect. Because also role dependent as well, I guess, right?
No, that's what I was saying, in that you have to make playstyle changes, because back then, when you would play against Dive, you wouldn't be fragging or as hard, or that wouldn't be your sole job, because it's better to just try to play to live than it is to frag in certain teams, in most teams rather, I should say. So in this meta, it's a lot more fun because you get to do a lot more, I guess, and it feels at least like everything you do mechanically feels at least somewhat impactful to the team fights, whereas in the other ones it was you got to pick off, and then it'd be res or something like that, and it's not worth the risk.
I think that for people who know Overwatch, we don't really mind goats. I actually like watching goats to a certain degree. I don't want goats to die in a fiery pit. I wanted Stage 1 Mercy to die in a fiery pit last season. I think that I like that there is an option to play a tank and support heavy mobile style of gameplay in the game. Do I want it to be as dominant as it is? No. But do I want it to be an option for teams? Yes. And I do think there are subtleties to it that are lost on most people who are just looking at, 2 grabs, 2 self-destructs, sound barriers all coming in. It's a mess to watch.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about how it's the most team-oriented meta that I've ever seen. And probably Overwatch has ever seen in general, just because there's so many things that people overlook, or the general public overlooks. They're like, oh, it's just it's just Rhine swinging at each other, who gets more damage first, right? But
so let me try and explain some of these combos, because you play these important positions, a lot of crowd control. So for those people who are sort of confused at what happens in goats, so there is a sequence of ultimates. So let's say, for example, one of the most common ones you're going to see is that the Zarya is going to throw in a Graviton Surge. Okay. And that Graviton Surge, depending on how charged the other Zarya is, depending on how close the enemy Reinhardt is, so the enemy Rhine gets caught in it, or your Rhine gets caught in it. Let's say I am receiving the Graviton Surge. I am on the receiving end of it. My team's in a clump in a ball. their question becomes, does their Zarya have a lot of charge? Is their Reinhardt close enough to start swinging at me? If yes, then my Zen might trance while we're inside the Graviton Surge. At which point, the enemy team might be like, fuck you, here's a Diva Bomb, because trance is a healing over time, and you can instantly die from a Diva Bomb. So the Diva Bomb comes in. And at that point, my team's Lucio has to decide, do I want to use Sound Barrier to prevent this? And if I do use Sound Barrier, I have to time it properly because the Diva Bomb does
Yu-Gi-Oh, but with
1,000
live action element.
So it's like, but the Sound Barrier is only there and it ticks down. So how do I time it perfectly to get that the maximum amount of shields on everybody so that we're not going to die to the Diva Bomb? Is the Reinhardt going to turn their shield to face the Diva Bomb if we don't use the Sound Barrier? Does that mean that we have enough healing to avoid incoming damage from their Zarya right clicks? Like, these are all things that
if your Ryan turns his shield,
and you
does
can
their Ryan
still
have
die
shatter?
after all that.
Yeah, exactly. Does their Ryan have a shatter? So, like, what happens?
And that was all a 10-second span in the game, by the way.
Oh, no, it was like 3
That's
seconds,
it.
maybe.
Five,
And then the other thing,
I'd say.
here's another thing. So, what's the timing of the Diva Bomb? Oh, is it after the grav ends? Now I have to worry about, is there Lucio, when the grav goes away, going to boot 4 of my members into the Diva Bomb where we don't have any defense? So there's a lot of decisions that are happening in a really, really short period of time.
You know, the problem there, Monty, is actually that's why I can see why you compare it to a MOBA, because obviously the problem in a MOBA is it's funny that people always say Overwatch is impossible to spectate. If you've ever seen any of those sequences, so for example, Jat in the LCS did this a couple of seasons ago, where he would take one team fight and he would slow-mo it and he would break down like, this is the target.
It's like 26 things happening.
Yeah, and what you learn is that in League of Legends, even if you know the game pretty well, you're missing a lot of nuance. So like, the problem here is if you're someone who's an absolute rank beginner and this is like your first time watching Overwatch, you do think they're just spamming, basically, but they're not. Like, there's a logic as to what they're doing, and as you said, sometimes you don't do it, so it's not spam.
So let me ask you guys, so each one of you, pick one aspect of GOATs that you think people should pay more attention to that is sort of overlooked right now. Like, pick an important aspect of like some of these big ult spammy team fights, or something that the Lucio players or the Zen players tend to do. Do you think gets lost?
That reminded me. I wanted to say something on the Lucio players, because there was I don't know if you remember the Philly game, we killed them 2-0 a lot. There's a lot of Lucio players that you should pay attention to, because they go for like boops on the Reinhardt to like make sure that they either don't get in grab or they get shatter off or something like that. So like,
Yeah.
that's probably a big one.
Lucios are such big playmakers, it pisses me off. Because
It's a great time to be. Look, those guys had to play Mercy all of. Okay,
Yeah.
like they should get some time being able to make some plays.
yeah, like I would say a lot of times when Reinhardt's like any Reinhardt dies, like if he looks out of, chances are he probably got boot by a Lucio and then boot by a Diva and then stunned by a Brig and then whipped by a Brig and then he gets pinned back. Dude.
Yeah, what's the complaint? You're the center of attention. Everyone's watching you, baby.
Yeah, super low, dude.
So Super, what do you think that people should look for when they have GOATs? Like, what do you think are some impactful plays that are going unnoticed?
Lucios, 100%. Lucio boops are so important. It's unreal. And then like you have to try and like block it with your such a thing that happens with a lot of teams is like, oh, Ryan will have shatter, and then Lucio wants to go for a boop, and then I have to try and block the boop, but also like keep on they have an earth shatter, so I have to like look for the Lucio if he's trying to boot me into the team or boot me in the sky, and I have to keep track of the Ryan for the shatter. It's like, it's not easy.
I know you said one thing, by the way, Monty, but I think specifically in the GOATS comp, I think if you have the All-Star Pass, if you buy it on Twitch, you can go
Nice
to...
plug.
Okay,
He's preparing for his casting career.
No, if Ryan Shield's about to die, I think it's a good idea to swap to the Zen POV, because I think that there's a lot that can be done as Zen damage-wise after their shield's dead, after the Ryan shield's low. I know that's even hard to see with all the colors, though. So
I actually think
that could be a
Zen
hard
is,
one.
obviously one of the difficult things about Overwatch is that who you observe is very meta dependent, right? Like in
Yeah.
a certain meta or a certain comp, like you may want to watch one hero more than another. And I do think that, one of the things I'll talk to the observers about is I think in general, Zen is one of the best heroes to watch in this meta.
I think the
perspective to view from.
The only reason I said not to watch it the whole time, I think, is because it feels kind of like you're getting cucked just shooting shield the whole day. But like as the Zen
At least
itself,
I can see all of both teams.
Yeah, you can see everything. Yeah, but people are like, oh, he's just shooting shield. That's not very interesting. But it's like doing a lot. Dude, the damage itself is very important.
So Thorin, I've got a question for you. Now that we've mentioned the all access pass,
Sure.
like, you know that they are now streaming like all the perspectives of the players and like the top down map as well as part of this. What do you think of this feature as part of esports in general? Because it's pretty new.
Sure. The big problem with that is like I can't know. Like one thing I have to admit is I'm not usually that good at gauging what like plebs like, basically. Like a famous example I always give is I'm actually the only person in the world, Monty, where when they launched skins in CSGO was like, this shit'll never take off. Who gives a fuck about skins? And obviously it was literally the biggest thing ever, and like, you know,
like
made the game like
exponentially
good. Yeah, exactly. Like, so, you know, I'm basically that dude who sort of like turns down, like, you know, like Apple when they like wanted to be bought out at the beginning. So I'm like, this shit'll never take off. Who cares about computers? Like, so anyway, I will say that at the beginning. But so as a result, I don't know if like fans would specifically want to watch one POV, but I can say I definitely do, because that is actually the thing in League of Legends that used to kill me, because we had no replays in League of Legends, right? So
that was the worst.
So for example, actually the LPL used to do something similar. They used to have a stream for each of the players, and I used to watch just that, even though like LPL wasn't my favorite league, because you could watch a person's entire game. And the key thing is, if you want to, especially if you want to know how good a player is, like if you have a favorite player, it's really tough to gauge what they're doing, except for when they have the highlight play or the misplay, if you just watch the observer feed. Whereas if you can even see like the guy, even just like differences in how he moves around the map, how he makes a decision of when to go in, that actually gives you so much more insight into who the person is as a player, you know. You can't really just go off like the stats and, you know, what the big player was. That usually is just a highlight, isn't it? It doesn't tell you the nature of a player and anything complete about them. So I think it's a good initiative. I would hope, by the way, that what this ends up doing is, like I said, I don't know if all the fans will do it, but I would think that actually it's people like content creators that could benefit the most from this, and analysts.
Especially because now they're releasing the top-down views, which are like insanely important to studying the game. Like
some people who do that, like manual stats catching. Some people were telling me that they like, it was like, it should see how impossible some of the judgment calls were when they were watching some of these VODs trying to figure out like every stat of what happened. Like, I don't pity whoever was doing that.
But I think that last season, when the casters and the teams got access to every single VOD, start to finish, top down, I think for us and for the coaches, this is 100% the most important film that exists. You know, having the other perspectives is great. Having replays, which hopefully we will have eventually, would be even better. But I think that having this access via the command center, you can actually make content now, and I will make content that shows positioning. Because it was so hard before, because you're like freeze frame. Do you see that outline of the sombra
through the wall? Oh yeah.
You're like it's like in the distance. You're like, that means she's on this platform, and then you like change your screen, and it's like, you know, the mini map that somebody like stitched together from taking a zillion screenshots of the map. You're like, put an X like right here. It's just like, it's ridiculous, right? So I think that the tools themselves are better.
Yeah, go on.
No, I just.
Oh, sorry.
I'm happy that they're doing that, because especially, you know, Overwatch is unquestionably difficult to watch as an esport, and I think people watch it for different reasons. And I think the main feed is still going to be for those people who sit on their couch and have an entertaining experience. Yeah. But I think there was something that was lacking for players who wanted to get better, because you couldn't really learn positioning without the top-down map. You couldn't really, you know, be on board with, you know, if I'm a Zen player and I want to watch Dogman the whole match, then I'm going to learn way more to help my own gameplay. And I think most esports fans watch esports to help their own gameplay. So giving people the option to do that, I think, is super.
Sure. Right, what about this then? So I have to finish this one soon because of limited time. So how about we do this? Since we already are not in almost any episode ever going to be able to talk about 20 teams in
too many teams now.
Like, generally I picked ones that had like interesting like up or down storylines. So what about this then? Since you guys are only on this episode at the moment, although Super's already got 2 in, you know, he's not even fucking playing that much, whatever. Anyway, how about we do this to close up? Of the teams that we didn't mention, tell us a team that you think is really strong. Like, people should definitely watch out for this team as the season goes on. It doesn't have to be based on like the record, just your own personal opinion. So go on, Super. Who would you pick for this that we didn't talk about?
That we didn't talk. I think I think Chengdu might surprise some people, genuinely, because they do a lot of things that teams just can't practice
They don't
for.
play goats.
Yeah,
They play Hammond
and
every map.
Ameng is a disgusting Hammond. He is so good at playing Wrecking Ball. It's kind of unreal. Like everything he does is just so smooth and so clean to watch. So I think people should maybe watch for Chengdu.
Do
Okay.
we talk about gladiators at all? I know
Briefly,
at the
but only
beginning-
for your
Briefly.
match. So yeah, give us some thoughts if you have them on.
I was just gonna say that I think gladiators is probably I know a lot of people rate them very highly, but I think that I think the soul showing was kind of like a warm up for them. I think because at least from what I've seen of them, I think they're a really good team and they have some interesting play style changes to them that I think will help them in the future games of this stage. So I think they'll be a top team.